You're sitting in your home having breakfast when suddenly the ground opens up and swallows it completely, leaving you only seconds to run away. Sinkholes happen when the water erodes underground rock layers. They can happen suddenly or form gradually and send warning signs. A sinkhole can also release toxic gases from under the ground, making it even more catastrophic. Sometimes, even huge ships sink in the open seas for no visible reason. The reason is often the pockets of bubbles that underwater volcanoes produce even while they're sleeping. Those productive magma factories are hidden under 8,500 feet of water. When they wake up, they act just like land volcanoes, and they can cause destructive tsunamis. When the winds and ocean currents turn into beasts, they have the power of moving entire walls of ice 30 feet tall onto land. It happens mostly in early spring, when the ice is thawing but hasn't melted yet. Nothing can stop those ice tsunamis on their way of destruction. On a fine summer evening of 1854, the American ship Shooting Star was on its way to Indonesia. Suddenly, the ocean in front of it turned white. Was it some mysterious sea monster? Or maybe mermaid tricks? The sailors dubbed it Milky Sea. All that white glow was caused by billions of trillions of shiny bacteria in the water. And it still happens today. Powerful storms and cyclones can turn the sea into a giant bath filled with foam. When that foam moves ashore, it fills a whole town. Luckily, foamy storms are extremely rare. They might look harmless, but have the power of destroying property, causing floods, and taking lives. Plus, they bring a scary surprise of sea snakes on land. It spreads in a matter of minutes, covering huge areas with its hungry flames. A wildfire can reach the speed of 14 miles per hour, and it's easily the most feared natural disaster. It affects people's lives thousands of miles away, polluting the air and causing breathing problems. Even advanced technologies can't predict it, and controlling it is also near impossible. In the hottest and one of the driest places on Earth, Africa's Danakil Desert, temperatures often rise above 120 degrees Fahrenheit. The out-of-this-world landscape has many active volcanoes and geysers that spit out toxic gases like chlorine and sulfur. The vibrantly green, electric blue, and yellow waters are all rain and seawater warmed up by magma. One wrong step here, and you'd be gone for good. When tectonic plates that make up the Earth's surface clash, waves of powerful energy get out. This is how an earthquake is born, also known as the most common and devastating natural phenomenon on this planet. Thousands of them happen every year, and as they cause tsunamis, landslides, fire, and famine, the damage is always huge. Now we find ourselves in the Namib Desert in southern Africa. You notice a strange phenomenon stretching hundreds of miles. These unusual round patches in the sand have been dubbed fairy circles. Their diameters can be anywhere from 6 to 50 feet across. One theory says the circles are made by sand termites. They dig holes to store water and eat all the roots of plants so that nothing grows on the patches. Other versions claim that it's all the fault of radiation or a toxic plant that affects everything around. Hey, not all lightning strikes from the sky. There's a very rare phenomenon called a dirty thunderstorm. During this event, lightning is created not by clouds in the sky, but a volcano. Japan's Sakurajima is one of the most famous active volcanoes in the world. Almost every day it erupts and releases black clouds into the air. Lightning forms inside these clouds. During any storm, ice crystals collide with each other and create electricity. This is how ordinary lightning appears. During a dirty thunderstorm, particles of volcanic ash collide instead of ice crystals. Our journey continues on the water. We get on a boat and sail away from the shore. It doesn't matter where we are, because this phenomenon happens all over the world. The sea is crystal clear and calm. There's no wind. But what's that? You hear a loud hum. Within seconds, a massive wave 45 feet high appears from the calm sea surface. Luckily, your boat manages to stay afloat, and the wave disappears as suddenly as it appeared. You've just survived an attack from a rogue wave. Some scientists believe they appear when the surface sea current collides with a strong headwind. Others say it's born from the collision of warm and cold currents. But the most interesting theory is that waves are formed by something called kinetic vampirism. According to this version, under certain natural conditions, waves acquire the ability to exchange kinetic energy. And among all the waves, there will be one, the vampire. It absorbs and collects energy from all the others and then releases it in one blow. This explains the impact force and its sudden disappearance. Our next stop is the Atacama Desert in northern Chile. It's one of the driest places on Earth, usually getting less than a half an inch of rain a year. But every 5 to 7 years, flowers randomly bloom here. It's connected with the El Niño phenomenon, where warm ocean temperatures create more precipitation on land. Then the yellow sands of the Atacama get colored purple, white, green, and pink. Blooms from over 200 unique flower species. But strangely enough, the desert won't bloom if it gets too much rain. Back to Australia. We arrive at the town of Wagga Wagga in New South Wales. It's May, winter starts next month here, but the temperature is comfortably cool. The grass is still green, it's bright and sunny. In the distance you see white fields covered in snow. But as you get closer, you realize that's not snow at all. It's a blanket of spider webs. And this is a completely natural phenomenon. It's something a lot of spider species do called ballooning. They'll crawl to a high-up place, say a tree or a telephone pole, and release a stream of silk. The wind catches that silk, and the spiders take flight. If enough of them do it at once, as in millions, you get a mass spider migration and a scene that looks like something from your worst nightmare. When this spider rain ends, the land is covered in webs. Fields, trees, fences, everything around. It's totally harmless to people, though pretty inconvenient. Well, good luck sleeping tonight. At first glance, this pretty waterfall, located in Minnesota in the U.S., looks like your average waterfall. What's interesting about this waterfall is that it has two different bodies of falling water. One side has water falling into another body of water, Lake Superior. The other one has water that falls straight into a huge natural hole in the ground. Where does this water lead? Well, that's the mysterious part. No one seems to know. People visiting the waterfall have dropped sticks and other objects down the disappearing waterfall, but they never see their items reappear downstream. In the past, scientists put the water to the test by releasing dye into the waterfall. They've even dropped large amounts of ping pong balls down there. But they've never found a trace of the dye in any bodies of water in the area. So, where is this water going? Well, most of you will agree that this water has to go somewhere. Perhaps it's going into the ground. But wouldn't it have to come out somewhere? Scientists are still working on figuring this one out. Can you believe that there's a place on Earth with its own ecosystem and atmosphere similar to another planet? Well, start believing. Moveo Cave, located in southeastern Romania, remained closed in complete darkness for a whopping 5.5 million years. It wasn't until workers discovered the cave when they were looking for a place to build that anyone learned about it. Scientists carved out an opening to the cave and found that a completely sustained ecosystem was thriving inside. As a pathway was carved through the rock past numerous tunnels, scientists found a lake of sulfuric water that stank like rotten eggs. The air was filled with hydrogen sulfide and had 100 times more carbon dioxide than Earth's air contains. Needless to say, this air is completely toxic. What's even crazier is that a whole ecosystem has been existing in this cave, with 33 species that can't be found anywhere else on Earth. This cave gives us a glimpse of what could possibly exist on other planets with completely different atmospheres. How it managed to exist on Earth all this time without anyone knowing is rather unbelievable, isn't it? Now picture this. You're watching a volcano erupt, which is a scary view by itself. But suddenly, you notice ominous bright flashes lighting up the sky over the volcano. It takes the nightmarishness of the experience to a whole new level. There is not one, but two perfectly good scientific explanations for the phenomenon of volcanic lighting. One cause is static electricity, which occurs when dense ash particles rub together not very high above the ground. The other source of volcanic lightning is high above the surface, near the stratosphere, where chaotically moving ice crystals set free powerful jolts. What looks like frozen flying saucers is, in fact, packets of highly flammable and combustible methane gas. Trapped underwater, it forms psychedelic landscapes and stunning patterns. Typical for northern lakes, such as Lake Abraham in Alberta, Canada. These bubbles appear when dead animals, leaves, and plants fall into the water and get consumed by bacteria. These bacteria later excrete methane gas. But don't be fooled by the beauty of this phenomenon. When spring comes, the ice melts, and the methane bubbles start to fizz and pop in a most amazing way. You wouldn't want to light a match in the area. You could provoke a massive explosion. On top of that, methane is the gas which creates a greenhouse effect and, therefore, warms up the planet. In 2010, Pakistan experienced the worst flood in the country's history. This natural disaster hit more than 14 million people with 10 years' worth of rainfall covering the country in less than a week. People lost their homes, countless buildings were completely ruined, and rivers burst over their banks. But something unique and unexpected came from the aftermath of the flood. Tons of insects had to look for a shelter above the ground, and spiders chose to nestle in trees. As a result, they cocooned their new homes in such thick spider webs they were visible from a distance. Honestly, this view gives me chills. There must be thousands of spiders lurking in these trees. Imagine you're surfing a perfect wave, and then it suddenly freezes. Well, it sure sounds creepy, but couldn't possibly happen in real life, right? Wrong. You can see mind-blowing frozen waves in Antarctica. These waves occur when ice gets compressed, and the ever-increasing pressure squeezes the air bubbles out. As for the beautiful blue color, it's the result of ice melting and refreezing. Kawajian volcano in Indonesia is not your ordinary lava-belching mountain. Instead of producing black smoke and red lava as most volcanoes do, this eccentric guy lets out a blue flame and electric blue lava. This phenomenon occurs because the volcano contains some of the highest levels of sulfur in the world, and when sulfuric gases interact with scorching air and get lit by the molten lava, they start to turn blue. Unfortunately, you can see this mesmerizing sight only at night. By the way, the world's largest acid lake is also located inside this crater. In 2018, the legendary waterfalls, located at the border between New York State and Ontario, Canada, managed to shock everyone into silence. Tourists who arrived to admire the power of the roaring water were astonished to find Niagara Falls frozen. I'm jumping ahead of myself. The waterfalls weren't frozen per se, since such a feat is impossible for a mass of flowing water that huge. But microscopic water droplets that became airborne off Niagara Falls, as well as the mist, formed a crust of ice over the top of rushing water. As a result, when looking at the waterfalls, you'd think for sure they were frozen. In reality, the water kept flowing, but it was hidden beneath the ice. If you visited the swamps of North Carolina at the beginning of 2018, you never would have forgotten the view that you would have been greeted with. Imagine ponds filled with ice-cold water and covered with ice. Easy, huh? Now, picture dozens of alligator snouts that are poking out of the ponds, still and frozen in the ice. Despite this terrifying picture, the animals are very much alive. That's only a very special crocodile way to survive abnormal cold weather. Since their nostrils are above the water, the predators can breathe while their bodies are in a hibernation-like state. It allows the animals to conserve energy and stay warm and alive. In March 2018, people who looked up in the sky in northern Nevada could see the rarest and most bizarre cloud ever, a horseshoe cloud. Unless you know the scientific explanation of this phenomenon, it can scare and puzzle even the most experienced skywatcher. But meteorologists know that such a horseshoe vortex happens when a flat cloud travels over a column of warm rising air. This air not only gives the cloud its impressive shape, but also adds some spin to its movement. Unfortunately, such clouds are very fleeting and usually last for only several minutes. On the other hand, you don't need too much time to figure out what this cloud looks like anyway. On March 19, 2018, the inhabitants of Alabama had to run for their lives from the huge chunks of ice falling from the sky. It was the infamous hailstorm of Alabama, which caused millions of dollars worth of damage. After the hailstorm, it looked as if the place had been thoroughly trashed by savages. Broken shop windows, smashed car windshields, broken billboards, and holes in the roofs. But what made researchers really excited was a hailstone found near the town of Cullman, Alabama. This softball-sized monster was more than 5 inches across, and thus set a new state record. Well, I'm just glad I wasn't under that gigantic hailstone when it landed. Since we're talking about the most baffling natural phenomena, it would be a crime not to mention snow in a desert. Yep, in the winter of 2018, the inhabitants of the Sahara Desert, one of the driest and hottest places on this planet, woke up to discover a thick blanket of snow covering the sand. In some places, the layer of snow enveloping the dunes reached a staggering 15 inches. Meteorologists, however, had an explanation for this exciting phenomenon. They stated that cold pools of air, combined with the precipitation from the most recent storm, resulted in a snowfall instead of rain. If a storm holds back your long-planned picnic, keep calm and think about how lucky you are that it's not the Catambo, the world's longest lightning storm. The heart of the storm, which repeats every year, is over Lake Maracaibo, Venezuela, and it towers way higher than your regular thunderstorm. This natural phenomenon lasts for up to 160 days and generates nearly 300 lightning strikes a day. You've probably heard how they say that lightning doesn't strike in the same place twice? Well, the Catambo doesn't seem to know about this rule. At least it doesn't prevent storm clouds from gathering in the very same place year after year. At the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, off the west coast of North America, there's a subduction zone. That's when 2 tectonic plates meet and one starts to bend and slide below the other. The Cascadian Trench runs from Northern California to Vancouver Island. In this case, the oceanic floor is being forced beneath the North American landmass. The floor moves around 1.6 inches per year, but the upper part of the system is stuck, and now the North American plate is compressed. The pressure keeps building up there, and it needs to be released. It might happen in the form of a magnitude 9 earthquake. This might cause the coast to sink by 6.5 feet and could make it move horizontally. And after the earthquake tails off, the coast could experience a tsunami similar to the wave that hit Japan in 2011. Scientists have calculated that in the last 10,000 years, the area has experienced 41 large earthquakes. The last magnitude 9 tremor occurred in January 1700. Experts currently believe there's a 37% chance that a 7.1 magnitude tremor will occur in the next 50 years. The Sun's big one. Luckily for us, one of the worst solar flares ever recorded happened when our civilization wasn't vulnerable to the fury of the Sun. It's known as the Carrington event. It happened in September 1859, long before the development of modern technology. A huge wave of plasma and magnetic field washed over the Earth's own protective magnetic layer. This produced an enormous solar storm. This led to intense auroras that lit up the skies. But aside from the pretty lights, the strong electrical currents that came with the storm had major consequences. The telegraph communication systems covering both Europe and North America went down. Fires blazed, and disconnected power supplies kept relaying their eerie messages. In 1989, another bad solar storm struck the Earth. The most extreme results were seen in Quebec, Canada. The power grid went totally offline, and 6 million people were left without electricity. Since solar flares happen often, some scientists predict that another powerful storm will occur soon. They've named it the Big One. Big solar storms like this happen only once every 500 years. Scientists believe it'll be powerful enough to knock out electrical and communication systems around the world for days, months, or even years.